They told us that borders keep danger out, that national security protects the homeland, that law enforcement exists to serve the citizen, that the state defends the innocent. But what if the threat didn't come from outside the walls? What if it came from the institutions inside them? Welcome to Twisted Plots. Here we uncover the stories that slip between headlines, press releases, and patriotic slogans. The stories that no agency wants televised. Tonight, we're stepping into a reality most Americans sense, but rarely dissect. The federal war being waged inside the United States, against its own people. No outrage, no riots, no emergency broadcasts, just normalization. Disclaimer: this video is an independent commentary and analytical narrative created for educational, journalistic, and public interest purposes. It does not advocate violence, civil unrest, or hostility toward any individual, institution, or government agency. All referenced information, including statistics, legal cases, and public statements, is drawn from publicly available media, investigative reports, court filings, research documents, and government publications. Interpretations presented are editorial in nature and should be understood as analysis, not as absolute claims of fact. This content does not assert that all federal officers, immigration personnel, or law enforcement entities engage in misconduct, nor does it imply guilt on the part of any individual without due process. The objective of this piece is to examine systemic patterns, question institutional power, highlight public accountability issues, and encourage critical thinking in a functioning democracy. Viewer discretion is advised. If you disagree with this analysis, good. Awareness begins where agreement ends. The new security theater. For years, we were told federal enforcement was about border control, about stopping dangerous criminals, about protecting the nation from external threats. But the battleground shifted, quietly, strategically. Immigration enforcement, once a patrol mission, became a domestic combat operation. Not at border crossings, not at airports, not at sea, but in grocery store parking lots, residential neighborhoods, suburbs, church lots, school zones, the interior. The part of America no one imagined would become a security zone. The numbers that expose the shift. Let's skip the slogans and talk data, because the numbers don't do propaganda, they just reveal patterns. Between 2015 and 2021, federal immigration agents were tied to at least 59 shootings. 23 people didn't survive. That was the prelude. Then came mid-2025. A new doctrine, a new command structure, a new rhetoric. In just 6 months, there were 14 separate shooting incidents involving the same agency, not in war zones, in American cities. A projected 300% escalation in lethal encounters. This wasn't enforcement. This was mobilization. And the violence didn't just happen in open-air confrontation. Inside federal custody, 2025 recorded 32 deaths, the highest in 2 decades. Detention wasn't a holding facility. It became a pressure chamber. The cases. No one wants to replay the most chilling stories aren't the statistics, they're the footnotes. Minneapolis, January 2026. A mother, a poet, a commuter, surrounded by armed agents in broad daylight. 3 shots later, she was dead in her SUV. The official line, domestic terrorist. No trial, no evidence presented to the public, just a label. The new currency of state justification. When local investigators requested access, The federal government walled off the case, seized control of evidence, and blocked witnesses. Transparency didn't fail. It was never permitted. Virginia. An unarmed man shot by an agent during a joint task operation. The family begged for an investigation. They received silence. Nashville. A routine supermarket parking lot. A driver refused to show ID. The agent fired into a moving truck, surrounded by civilians. The justification? Threat. The video later showed a fleeing vehicle, not an attacking one. The loophole that makes it legal. We'll now ask the uncomfortable question. Why do federal agents shoot at moving cars when nearly every major police department banned that practice decades ago? Because the federal rulebook kept a door open. If a moving vehicle can be defined as a deadly weapon, then deadly force can be justified. And here's the tactic. Stand in front of the car, wait for panic, classify flight as attack, pull the trigger, and write the report. In that sequence, every frightened civilian becomes a hostile target. And because the justification lives in paperwork, not in footage, the system protects the shooter. When the topic of accountability comes up, watch how the machinery behaves. Deny, defend, reinstate. An agent caught shoving an unarmed woman in a courthouse. Reinstated before the investigation even ended. Internal affairs didn't clear him. The administration did. The message to the rank and file wasn't subtle. Don't hesitate, we have your back. Even violence against civilians can be turned into political leverage. A single attack against an ICE facility was used to shut down criticism, shift blame, and frame dissent as extremism. The victims became the aggressors. The agency became the survivor. Narrative management is policy now. The last refuge of the exempt: if a civilian is shot by a federal agent, can they sue? Technically, yes. Practically, no. The Supreme Court gutted the Bivens doctrine, the legal tool citizens once used to hold federal officers accountable. In one ruling, national security trumped personal rights. In another, immigration operations were declared immune from civil suits. Even warrantless home raids became legally insulated. Oversight isn't weak, it's absent. To complete the loop, video evidence is routinely purged after 90 days in use of force incidents. Accountability can't survive without memory, so memory is deleted. There's one more detail no one talks about. Border enforcement doesn't live at the border. It exists in a legally expanded ring called the 100-mile zone, a buffer where constitutional protections become flexible. 2/3 of the U.S. population lives inside that ring. Chicago, New York, Boston, San Francisco, Los Angeles, not border towns, heartland cities, and in rural communities near the perimeter, checkpoints and stops have become routine. Not for criminals, for residents. A country cannot call itself free when movement requires permission. The breach of trust. The militarization has become so aggressive that even police departments, the institutions meant to collaborate, are opting out. Dallas refused $25 million in federal partnership money. Not out of ideology, out of risk assessment. One police chief put it plainly: we don't want that smoke. Minneapolis went further. The mayor publicly told federal agents to leave the city when local leaders reject federal force. The conflict isn't philosophical, and it's existential. This is the part no one says aloud. Federal agencies aren't just policing immigrants. They're rehearsing control mechanisms on a population too fractured to resist. The weapons are not just firearms. They are laws. Loopholes, narratives, labels, immunity, erasure. The public doesn't riot. Not because it agrees, but because it cannot track the battlefield. The awakening. This isn't a call for chaos, or fences, or borders, or revolutions. It's a call for awareness. To recognize that the state is not malfunctioning, it's operating exactly as designed to protect itself, not you. And awareness is contagious. Questions are dangerous. Because once the illusion cracks, even slightly, the propaganda never seals it shut again. If this episode forced you to pause for even one moment, share it. Let others trace the pattern. Let the conversation breach the perimeter, debate it, dissect it, doubt it. That's the point. We are not here to tell you what to believe. We are here to make sure you stop believing blindly. This is Twisted Plots. And this was the Federal Ghost War